And I'm going to have to shed this jacket because it's very warm in here.
All right. I'd like to begin our program this evening and welcome everybody to our career panel. We're super excited to be bringing this to you remotely to comply with the COVID-19 safety requirements. We are doing this for the first time online. So please bear with us if we have any glitches. It's all a new experience for us. We're super excited to have you all join us. So welcome everybody. The event tonight is going to help those of you who are applying to law school or considering coming to law school to think about all the different career opportunities that are available to you by hearing and seeing our wonderful alumni and panelists and hearing their stories. So thank you to our great panelists for their time and joining us tonight. Before we get started, we want to ask everyone to be sure that your camera view located on the upper right-hand corner is on speaker view, not gallery view. So if you could take a moment to change your camera to speaker view. Thank you. Additionally, if you haven't done so already, please turn your video off. It's a little distracting having so many different images. So if you would please go ahead and turn your video off. Later in the program, we'll have an opportunity, if you choose to, share your video when you ask a question. We welcome you to do that later in the program. But we do want to ask all of our panel members and Dean Pearson to please keep their videos on. And if all other participants can go ahead and turn their videos off, we greatly appreciate that. So, and if you could, if you haven't done so already, if you can enter your first and last name for attendance purposes so that we can see who's joined us today, we appreciate you doing that. We do have everybody muted just to prevent any distractions or background noise. So all of your microphones are muted. We will be welcoming you to ask questions during the program by using the chat option. And you can type a question to everyone or to a specific panel member or to Dean Pearson. You also could choose to use the hand raising icon and click on the hand raising icon, and then we will address your questions as we're able to throughout the program. And we are super excited to have 4 of our alumni joining us to talk about their experience at San Joaquin College of Law, their unique career path. And tonight's program will be moderated by Dean Janice Pearson. So welcome again, everybody. My name is Diane Steele, the Director of Admissions here with San Joaquin College of Law. We also have Francisco Rosas, our Assistant Director of Admissions, joining us. And I see several currently enrolled students, welcome, and several staff members, welcome. And we're super excited as well to have all of our prospective students. So without any further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Dean Pearson. Welcome, Dean Pearson.
Thank you. Well, I'll add my welcome to that as well. It's very exciting to be doing this evening. I know it might seem like an odd time to be thinking about going to law school, but in fact, just the opposite is the case for a number of reasons. First of all, it's been very shocking to me, but we continue to get jobs posted pretty much every day. So it seems like the legal community intends to go forward. Secondly, the people who just passed the February bar, who passed at a rate above the state average, by the way, all had jobs already. So that was a concern, but it's been allayed. But the most important reason to be thinking about going to law school now is because you're thinking about your future 4 years down the road. And you may have had a bad experience in losing a job during this crazy pandemic. One of the advantages that the skill set of law school gives to you is that you're always able to go forward with your own practice if something upsets your career at that point. So it's very much something to think about in terms of ensuring your own future. Several of these people have done exactly the same thing. It's really fun for me to have these folks here this evening because I get a chance to see people that I would normally not see for months or years on end. So I'm going to go ahead and just introduce the panel first, and then I'm going to go back and ask each of them to talk a little bit about how their career path developed. So the first person is Courtney Carone, and she has her own practice called Adamant Law Group in Los Angeles. Courtney, are you there? Just say hi.
Hi, I'm here.
There
Nice
she is.
to meet you all. See you all.
And the second one is Sally Moreno. She is the Madera County District Attorney. Sally?
Well, hello. It's nice to be here. Good to see you again, Dean Pearson.
You. The third is Vong Muanutua. And Vong is a Clovis City Council member and the Director of External Relations and Product Development for Community Medical Centers. Vong?
Good evening. Hi. Nice to see everyone. Nice to see you, Jan.
Hi.
Hi.
And last is Lazaro Salazar. And his caption is Lazaro Salazar Law, Inc. And I see for sure he's there. Hi, Lazaro.
Hi, Jan. Hi, everybody. Hi. Thanks for the invite. I'm happy to be here.
Oh, well, we can just stand and look at each other right now. That's giving me a big charge. Okay, well, we'll go back to Courtney. And Courtney, would you please describe how your career developed?
So my career was a little bit different than a lot of other students, I personally think. I graduated in 2007. I did not pass the bar exam until 2014. So there was a 7-year time frame between graduating and becoming a lawyer that I had to fill with some sort of experience. While I was a student at the school from my freshman or first year all the way through fourth, I was on the 4-year program. I worked as a paralegal, as a legal secretary, and a variety of a law clerk in a variety of different positions. And then upon graduating law school, took a position in Ventura as a paralegal at a law firm, which then led me to San Francisco, which then led me to Sacramento, and ultimately back to San Francisco and then Los Angeles. And once in Los Angeles, a larger law firm poached me and brought me in on their litigation team, and that firm was Glazer Weil. And I got to work on some entertainment law cases and some rather large litigation cases there. And then a recruiter grabbed me from there, also still in a paralegal field, and brought me over to Munger, Tolles & Olson, where my first trial was the BP oil spill trial, and I spent 2 months in New Orleans. So that was all just working as a paralegal. And then while at Munger, Tolles & Olson, some of the partners had said, you know, Courtney, you need to go back and take the bar exam and pass it and become a lawyer, because that's what you set out to do with your life, and that's what you were trained to do, and you need to go do that. And so I did. And I passed the bar exam, which was probably one of the, to date, the best day of my life. And from there, I went to work at Live Nation as a music attorney. The law firm I was with, they only hired lawyers from Harvard. So they made it pretty clear that I wasn't going to get to be a lawyer there, which I thought to myself, your loss. And took the position at Live Nation as a music attorney and worked there until I had my son. And then my first son, who's now 3.5. And at that point, I left Live Nation and started my own practice, which was really just helping different entrepreneurs with startup businesses. I still had a little bit of music on the side, just, you know, dabbling a little bit in corporate law, until somebody came along and said, hey, I've got this business I want to sell. I have a legal delivery cannabis business, and I would like to sell it. And would you mind going over the deal and telling me if this is a good deal, a merger and acquisition deal to sell my business? And I said, sure, let me take a look. And we ended up selling his business, and then that became a referral to somebody else, which became a referral to somebody else, and so on and so forth. Then municipalities in 2018 started opening the doors for legal cannabis in their communities, which meant that you had to go through an application process, and that was really structured very much like a request for proposal. So on behalf of multiple clients that by now I had just received through referrals, I filed in West Hollywood for a license on behalf of a client. There were 100 applicants, and these applications are ranked, and they are giving 8 licenses, 100 applicants, and my client's applications, which are more like 150-page magazines, were ranked in the #1 position, and that changed my career. So at that point, I became one of the very lucky and few cannabis lawyers in the area who people reached out to really help them achieve licensing. In the same regard with referrals, a well-known music attorney, Don Passman, was a close friend of my family's, my husband's family, who all work in the music industry as well. And he decided that he was going to make it his goal to help me with building a music industry practice. And so about every single day, I get 2 referrals minimum from this gentleman, which I then weed through to see if they're really cases that I can work on and actually help the musicians move forward, or if it's something that is a little bit out of my depth. And now I have an incredibly busy law practice. I have an associate that works with me, and I have a paralegal and an assistant. So the 4 of us pretty much keep this going on a daily basis. And the pandemic has certainly not slowed down anything that we have, especially since cannabis was deemed an essential business in all cities that have it legalized. So it has been nonstop for the past 3.5 years. And I attribute a great deal of that to the training that I received at San Joaquin, and not only that, but the continued support of the staff. Even later on in my career, there are still professors at the school who reach out to me on a regular basis just to check in and to tell me that they were thinking of me and to see if there's anything they can help me with. And I personally think that that is one of the most valuable resources of having attended San Joaquin, because I'm telling you that my colleagues are not having that same type of interaction from the schools that they attended.
That sounds extremely exciting.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's been a whirlwind.
Well, Sally, how have you ended up being Madera County District Attorney?
I can't think of a narrative that's more different than Courtney's. And I think it really speaks to the breadth and the diversity that San Joaquin encourages and develops. So I actually did not start out to be a lawyer. I went to college and got involved in ROTC there with the military. I was commissioned when I graduated, and I became a military police officer. Having majored in history, it's just like majoring in unemployment. So when I came back, I started looking for a job, and as it turns out, with my police background, LAPD was hiring. So I was down in LA, having been to Santa Barbara, and I started as a police officer there in Los Angeles. And that was very exciting. Then one day I was in a preliminary hearing testifying, and thinking to myself, this is a dangerous job I've gotten myself into. I can talk myself out of a lot of things, but I don't think I can talk myself out of everything. And that lady over there asking me questions, that looks like the job that I want. And that would have been the prosecutor. She was an LADA at the time. So I headed back home. I was born and raised here in Fresno, went to local high schools, and I started to law school. I did it in 3 years with the intention of being a prosecutor. At the beginning of my 3rd year, I got married. And what was interesting about that, I don't even know if you remember, Jan, but you and I had a long conversation about, getting married and how that could affect my career. And it was a ranging conversation, very sort of Socratic. You certainly weren't telling me anything, but it was very educational. And again, an experience that I don't think many people would have with their dean, looking out for them and making sure that they knew what they were getting into. So I started as a prosecutor and started having my children. At one point, I took about 3 years off with my kids. At another point, I took about 7 years off to raise my kids. My kids are now 22, 20, 15, and 13. And when I last went back to work in 2011, when my youngest started kindergarten, I said to myself, this is it. I'm going to do this career now. I love being a prosecutor. I came to work in Madera, and there ended up being a ton of controversy in the office. You can Google it if you're bored. But it became very clear to me that somebody who had the experience of a prosecutor and the ethics of a prosecutor and the knowledge of a prosecutor, by then I had prosecuted sexual assaults and homicides and serial arson and a lot of other kinds of cases, needed to step up. It was never my intention to be a politician, but the office needed somebody, so I threw my hat in the ring, and now I've been here for about 1.5 years. It's been a very exciting ride here too, in light of what's going on currently. When I came in, the office was all paper, barely managing emails. We immediately pushed out online file management that's available on the internet, laptops to everyone, and we went high tech. It turned out to be very serendipitous because when this COVID-19 thing hit, we were able to send people home and do work. So I also did manage last year to get one homicide trial out. All my peers in the DA club say you shouldn't be trying cases when you're the elected. But as it turned out, it had to be done. So hopefully I'll still be able to stay in the courtroom. That's where I love to be. And it's a very, very rewarding job, managing, helping, mentoring, and occasionally getting back in the courtroom.
Well, that, you're right, couldn't be any different from what Courtney had to say.
Right.
Vong, and yours is going to be different still. How did your career
I think you have a very diverse panel here this evening, Jan. And so, first of all, thank you for having us on, and Diane for reaching out, and to all the alumni that are here. You know, as young Hmong kids, we were always taught to reach something high in education, whether it's, you know, it's always those three, right? Doctor, lawyer, engineer. And so where's one of those three? And then shaped in all that is always elected office was always preached upon all of us. But when I was going to, how I got into law school is kind of interesting, because I was on the doctor route. And so, I was taking advanced calculus class, and I kept arguing with the professor. And after class, he said, hang on, don't leave yet. He says, what are you wanting to be? I said, probably a doctor. He goes, I think you're going the wrong route, son. You have a mind to go into law, you know, because you reason well and you like to talk back. So I said, okay. So I looked into it and went to the paralegal school at City College. From there, went to the law school. And it was intimidating. It was scary because, you know, English as a second language, first time reading a court case, not understanding at all the way it was written and the way judges explain things, and to actually try to understand something and to get the letter of the law out of it and to explain it to the professors. It was very intimidating, very scary, but stuck it out. When we finished, I worked for the courts right after we, like you said, Jan, we had jobs waiting for us, and it was in demand at that time to work in the probate court in Fresno Superior Court, worked there. Then my brother-in-law, who Paul Lowe, who was the first Hmong attorney in California, wanted to open a firm and needed a paralegal here in Fresno. So he went and did that. We did that for about 10 years. I took the bar exam once and came a couple points short, but the office was so busy that I just couldn't do anything else. Then he decided to apply for a judgeship. So he said, I'm going to leave so we can get another attorney to come take over the firm, or, you know, because, you know, when you are the only Hmong law firm in town, we were taking everything. We were helping people with Medicaid. We were helping people finding jobs, because everybody came to you for everything. And we were more of a nonprofit than we were a firm. And he's saying, I need something more stable because he had 4 kids. I need to apply for this judgeship so it'll have some steady income. And so he said that's where he was going. So I went to nonprofits as well, and I went to write grants because those are the skills learned. And so I went to do that, started writing grants, started to become a director who oversaw grants that we wrote, and moved up from there. Then got into human resources, got my PHR certification, and did that for about 5 years. Then went back into program directing, writing grants, and became a risk management director. This is all at ELC. And then I started teaching at Fresno State as well, because they were looking for someone with credentials, but also knew the Hmong language. And so we taught there, created the Hmong minor, the first one sort of west of the Mississippi on the university level. So did that at the same time, and then became the risk management director. And then I ran for office because I've always wanted to run for office. Got the one in 2017, and so been on that. After doing the risk management job for about a year and a half, the opportunity came at community medical centers. And so then I applied, and now I work there as director of external relations and sort of project development. And so now I'm here. And so finishing up my first term, and it's been exciting. I think it's been, the degree has lent credibility to whatever I set foot to do. And I think I owe that all to San Joaquin College of Law for providing that foundation for me. So
all I can say is,
quick
wow.
story.
You've been around. Wow. Lazaro.
Yes.
You get the last crack at this.
I'll be as brief as I possibly can.
No.
I was born in Mexico, brought to the United States when I was 2 months old, grew up in Sanger, went to Fresno State on a dare. I got accepted, and I chose economics as a degree because I thought it would make me money. Wrong. We'll put that aside. I wasn't ready to leave the university when I finished my economics degree, so I decided to minor in philosophy. I stayed an extra semester, so I graduated with a degree in both economics and philosophy. Everybody in the philosophy department was going to law school. So I did the law school thing. I went to McGeorge and hated it. It was just the worst experience of my life because I wasn't ready for it. That was just the bottom line. And it reflected on my grades. It reflected on my personality. It was just a horrible experience. So when I was at Fresno State, I was working for a firm here in Fresno. So when I went away to Sacramento, it was not that big a deal. Came back, the job was there. So when I thought I had law school behind me, I did the next logical thing, which was move to Japan. I went to Japan to teach English. I taught English. My original plan was to be there for 6 months. I ended up staying 2 years. And that's when I said, okay, I think I'm ready to come back to law school. I applied at San Joaquin. I arrived on a Sunday, and my prior employer contacted me that Sunday night, and I was working the Monday morning, and I was, I think, a week late for the first week of school. So got through school, and basically the employer then basically said, just get your ticket, get to work, let's move on. So I was working full-time, at school full-time, and I was fortunate enough to meet my wife, well, friend then, now wife, in Japan. So she came over to the States. We got married. And so I had those 3 things going on. I worked for the firm, total of about 12 years. And I worked as an attorney for about 4 years. I established a relationship with the Mexican consulate at that time through the firm. And when I decided to leave the firm, there was a position as consulting attorney for immigration. I had no idea what immigration was other than having a green card and having to apply for citizenship. And so the consul at that time said, hey, why don't you be our go-to immigration guy? I don't know anything about immigration. So she convinced me to do it. I've been doing that for 13 years now. I've since opened my office. I do 80% immigration, 20% PI, which is what I was doing in the other firm. And so now I'm consulting attorney for the consulate, have my own office, have about 15 people working for me. We have an associate, we have of counsel, we have a satellite office in Mexico. And besides that, I'm a dad and a husband, and honestly, nothing that we have today as far as what we do on a daily basis would have been possible without San Joaquin. So thank you guys. Thank you, Jen.
Thank you. Thank you. What was it difficult at all? How difficult was law school for you, or what advice would you give to people thinking about going to law school? Courtney, what do you think?
I don't think it was a secret to any of the faculty or staff when I was in law school, but I was a very active and involved person in a multitude of different activities, thinking that because undergraduate school was such a breeze, that law school was going to come equally as naturally. For me, that was not so much the case. I struggled my first year. I ended up having the valedictorian of 2 years prior was my tutor, as I was realizing how much I was struggling. I did have to work full time when I was a law student. Initially, I was a teacher, and then I moved into the various positions at law firms. And to the extent that you have the ability not to work full time, I think that's helpful, but can you do it as a full-time employee somewhere? Sure. That's why you have the option of a 3, 4, and 5 year plan or program that you can choose from. My advice would just be that you really do have to study. And if you think that volunteering at a million different nonprofits and working full time and living with a bunch of noisy roommates and taking care of your siblings and all of these different things that you're doing in your daily life are going to be just as easy when you're trying to take on a full law school load, especially if you want to do well, I think that could be a little bit of a misnomer. But do you have to completely 100% clear your schedule? Not necessarily, because I know a lot of folks at this point do have to work in order to afford, taking care of their families and themselves. And San Joaquin does a really good job at helping you balance that, so long as you have an understanding of what the expectations are and of what your actual abilities and capabilities are as a person.
Thank you. Thank you. Sally, what would you add? And in particular, someone is asking how you balance your time while you're in law school between work and study and family, etc.
So what I have had to do is to be very clear with myself about what I'm doing. So when I'm studying, that's my study time. And I don't listen to music while I study, and I don't check my email while I study, and I don't do other things while I was studying in law school. I had to be intensely focused on that. And then, I behave like a child sometimes, so I treat myself like a child. When I get through a certain amount, well, then I can go take a break. And even now, that still serves me really well. This job that I have, I could do 60 or 70 hours a week, but that's stealing time from my family. So I make sure that when I'm here at work, I'm being efficient. I try not to touch things more than once, and I try to gain mastery. I remember back in law school, particularly my first semester, I was a good reader, and I remember reading those cases. Vong, I can't imagine how you did it with English as a second language, because I'm reading it and it's like, okay, I thought I knew English pretty well, but this is a whole new language. So my advice would be too, as you start, if you feel overwhelmed, don't panic. It will come. You just have to stay focused, keep pounding away. And when you realize, when you get through law school, you've learned a whole different way to think. But in addition to that way to think, you have to learn good time management skills. And again, the most important part of that for me was whatever I was doing it with intensity, whether it was spending time with my family or working on homework or spending time at work. I don't know how many people could do something like this, but I had a great job. I worked at the Madera County Jail as a correctional officer. And so I would go to class from 6 to 9, at night, and then I would go to work from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. And so basically I had to stay awake, and they didn't mind if I did my homework while I was there. So I don't know if there are other jobs like that. I know my daughter sells trailers, and she does her homework, and her people know about it. So, you know, there's ways to manage things. You know, don't be sneaky, don't be doing stuff you're not supposed to be doing. But there are jobs where you have some latitude, and you can, you know, multitask while you're doing those things. So get creative, focus on what you're doing. And I agree with Courtney. You don't have to give up everything, but you do have to make sure that you're focused on law school.
Wow. Wow. Thank you. Vaughn, you want to answer her question about how hard it was English as a second language?
I think you just keep going. I mean, that's the, you have to have the word, you just keep reading and reading and reading, because there is a point where it does flip, and you finally go, I get how they're writing. I get how justice is right. And it's very empowering, because that skill stays with you forever. Because now you can read everything, you can read things, and it kind of makes you know how to focus your analytical skills in getting to the issue of what was written. And you can also infer from people's writing their perspective, and it's such a neat skill to have. And that's, you know, I appreciate the patience of the professors as, you know, they work with the diverse group of students. You know, San Joaquin is like a family. It's not like your traditional, what you see in the movies of law school, where everyone there is competitive. I'm trying to step over you so I can be the top, or be, you know, we all work together. There's a lot of people. I appreciate the mature students, Jan, that you have, that we keep bringing in. Mature meaning full-time folks who are working full-time jobs coming back, because they bring a perspective and a wisdom to education that you don't get if you just went 4 years straight to law school and then get out, because they bring life into the student experience. And when you get in there, you sort of get to know people, you start to help each other, and they're not competitive. They just want to finish, because all they're wanting is, I just want to better my life. And if you want me to help you, I'll help you. I'll read with you. We get through it all together. And once you finish that first, then like Courtney said, you get to choose. You know, do I go fast and finish in 3, or do I go 4 years, 5 years? Personally, I was married. So if you're married, you need a understanding spouse. So Sally and I, who are politicians, right? We're gonna go into politics. You need a spouse who's gonna say, all right, I'll take this public lifestyle that you're gonna choose, and I'll you know, ride along with you. Same thing with law school. You need someone who's just gonna say, hey, weekends, I work already full time, but the weekends I need to study. And you have students in that, and the spouse just took care of everything for the student to be able to finish and to complete. We had extended family here, my parents here, and so that helped a lot. And married, we had our right when I graduated, so you know, you can kind of see that we were just starting out, and money, you know, we both were in school, so money didn't come by easily. But with family, it helped, because the mom was right there, my dad was there, her family was here. That support system gets those of us who, you know, aren't well-to-do yet to get through. And so that's my advice. So, but at San Joaquin College of Law, you will have the support of the staff and the professors to get you through. So I just wanted to reassure everyone of that.
Thank you. Someone just sent a question that I think a couple of you have already answered, but the question was, did you work and have children while you went through law school? And Sarah, I'll let you answer that if you can, but I'd also ask you, what motivated you, what inspired you to go to law school?
I did not. I was fortunate enough not to have children when I was in law school. I agree with Vaughn that you have to have a spouse that fully knows what's going on and what to expect, and all the time you're going to be away from home. So having that support is a big deal. I don't know how. for those people who did have children, how they did it, but there was a lot of people who actually got through it. And the inspiration, I grew up with Spanish-speaking parents, and so for almost any transaction that they needed to engage in, I was in the middle of it, whether or not I understood the English, because it was Social Security, because it was unemployment, because whatever issue it was, I was always in the middle. So I grew up resolving disputes, trying to get a benefit and trying to comply with the requirements without even knowing it. So going to law school just seemed like the right thing to do, because I got tired of seeing my parents constantly struggling to get their point across or get something that they think they're entitled to. And obviously somebody saying, no, you're not. So to me, it was just a natural progression of how I was raised. Not that I grew up thinking I'm going to be a lawyer. Did my parents ever say you're going to be a lawyer? But again, it just seemed like the right, it just fit my path. And that's why I mentioned the fact that I was born in Mexico, not because for any special reason. It's just because people ask me, why did you pick immigration? And my answer, honestly, genuinely, is I didn't pick immigration. Immigration picked me. It's like I'm just following this life path that I'm on without even knowing where I'm going, but I'm having a great time. So.
Wow. The sentiment that immigration picked you is pretty impressive. So, Sally, did you have kids while you were in law school?
I didn't have my kids until I was out about 3 years.
Do you know people who were in the class with you that were in that situation of both working and having children?
Absolutely, I did. We formed a study group. I don't know if people still do that. I went to law school a long time ago, but my study group was so helpful. And we did work around, the four of us would meet together. We had a regularly scheduled time, and I know it was Jim Lee was the guy who was always we had to work around. His son was playing football in the Pee-wees, and then his other son was working on other things, and his wife really picked up a heavy load for him. So that was the truth, is that those spouses have to do it, but he never missed a game. We moved our scheduled meetings so that he could make those games, because those were important. And again, that was the thing. When we studied with intensity. And when we got to where we were done, then we could go and do those things that we needed to with our families.
Well, I'm going to thank you. I'm going to next answer 3 questions that have come in. Someone has asked about the field of law, special education. We actually have a clinic called the Bren Clinic that focuses on helping parents and actually educating administrators and parents about special education law. So if you're interested in that field, there's an automatic niche for you to start learning about it while you're in law school. A second question was, I took the LSAT in 2017. Do I need to take it again? And the answer is no, that score is still good. The other question is financial aid available, and absolutely financial aid is available. So I'm going to move on and ask Courtney, what case or instance in your career has been the most inspiring to you, or you are most gratified with?
So it actually wouldn't be in any of the areas that I'm actually practicing now, but one of the perks of working for a major law firm is that they have a pro bono department that sort of filters its way through everybody that works at the firm. So Munger, Tolles & Olson would take on pro bono cases, and then as just an employee there, you would sometimes during the course of your day be billing your time to a particular pro bono case, which of course never was charged anywhere. That's just how you would track your time as an employee. And after I had passed the bar, but before I had left Munger, Tolles & Olson for Live Nation, we had a case, an asylum case, come along where there was a transgender individual from Honduras who was seeking asylum in the United States. And they brought me into this case because they were obviously very short-staffed, and I ended up having the opportunity to work directly with that individual and help them with their asylum case, and eventually this asylum was granted. here. And I thought that it was just really one of the most powerful cases, because without the help of legal professionals, she would never have been able to call the United States her home. And she had made such a very long journey from Honduras to Mexico to here, and had really suffered some incredibly intense harm to both her person and I mean, just her spirit in general. And I can remember Thanksgiving, my dad was visiting, and I said, okay, Dad, I'm really sorry, but like, we got to go down to the firm because there are binders that we have to put together for the asylum hearing. You want to come and put together some binders with me? And so my dad was like, I'm all for it. Sounds good. So we drive down on Saturday to downtown LA from Santa Monica. And we go in there, and for the entire Thanksgiving day, my father and I sat there and pieced together binder after binder after binder that we were then going to be submitting with all the documents and proof, and the briefs that we had written in relationship to this particular person. And when all was said and done, I actually got to meet with her and sit with her, and it was very emotional and very hard not to fight back the tears, knowing that I'm so very fortunate in every day of my life, and the path that she had walked was incredible. And I was just very happy to have been able to have played a part in her continued happiness here in the United States.
Cool. Very, very wonderful. Sally, what do you think? What is the most, I don't know, case that you are most satisfied with having done?
Well, there's a few, you know, I spent some time prosecuting child sexual assault cases, and those were rewarding. But there's another case that stands out to me, and that was here in Madera County. There's a community up in the mountains called Yosemite Lakes Park. And several years ago, they had a serial arsonist who was up there setting fires on a regular basis. And I think over a period of about 6 weeks, there were about 30 fires. And the whole community was absolutely terrorized. I worked with CAL FIRE as they got closer and closer to finding out who was doing it. Eventually, they figured out who was doing it and issued arrest warrants. So we arrested them in June, and the defense whole deal was, you can't put this case on fast enough. So they refused to waive time. And we, on a case that size, normally you would expect it to take 4 or 5 years even to get to trial. There were thousands of pages of reports, scientific evidence, investigations, and they pushed us. So I tried it, and we had a verdict by the 1-year anniversary of that fire. We were in trial all of 6 months, dealing with firefighters. The firefighters basically moved into our conference room, and we worked with those victims and talking with those people who endured that. You know, they talked about in that community, they knew there was going to be a fire, and they had neighbors who had trouble, and they had animals that had to be taken care of. They wanted to leave, but they couldn't leave. They couldn't leave their neighbors, and they couldn't leave their animals. They had nowhere to put their horses, and they were terrorized by that. And so it was very rewarding. We got a very good verdict. And that was, it was nice to be able to feel like, you know, we got that stopped. And that's kind of followed me. It was a big case here in Madera. And, you know, even now, the male, it was actually a couple. So it was a really unusual arson case. The male is up for parole every year under some early parole laws that have passed since then. And the community always calls me. We always put together a packet. They always send emails. They remember still. Some of them, you know, literally have post-traumatic stress from having lived through that. So we still work on that. And I was able to add, there's some legislation that'll be on the ballot in the fall, adding some crimes to the list of violent crimes. And one of those that CAL FIRE and I went to work on was serial arson. You know, it's terrorizing to the people who live in those areas. So again, it feels like the case was able to make a difference. And through that year that was intense, I kind of became an expert in those serial arson. I still get calls from people up and down the state about how do we prove this and what do we do? And So it was rewarding and continues to be rewarding to have developed that expertise from going through that crucible.
I remember that very well. I don't live in Yosemite Lakes Park, but I live in that general area, and I remember how upset people were.
Yeah, it was terrorizing.
Lazaro, what would you add as the case or something that you're most proud of?
Sure. My very, very first trial was 5 months after I got sworn in. My instructions were to stay out of the way of the trial attorney who was coming up from LA. It was a triple death, and there were 4 attorneys on the plaintiff side. Well, the trial attorney from LA came up, and he represented a 3-year-old girl who lost her dad in an accident. So when the jury heard the story and saw the little girl in the courtroom, they said that they couldn't go forward with that little girl, knowing that that little girl's dad had passed away. So the defense attorney was really smart because he figured out that he was the lead attorney. So he settled with them. He settled with them right after voir dire. And so the other 2 guys, one was a work comp attorney, the other guy was a criminal defense attorney by nature. And as soon as they settled, they asked me, "Do you know anything about the liability in this case?" And I just looked at them and thought, "You're kidding." I had reviewed at least 5 different boxes full of deposition transcripts of experts. It was a heavy expert trial. And in essence, I took it over. And so it was the best 2 weeks of my life because I really, really enjoyed it. And the firm said, "Go ahead and do it," because it was a work comp case that got paid out. That was settled out. So the only thing remaining was a civil action, which the theory of liability was very, very, very thin. We ended up losing, but I think it was a 30-year trial attorney for the defense, the judge, and the jury afterwards gave me the biggest compliments. And they all thought that I'd been trying cases for over 10 years, when in fact, that was my very, very first case as a trial attorney. I loved it. I walked back into the office and said, "I don't know if this was your plan, but I want every single trial to come to me from now on." And we had a great time. That was the PI side of life. I really enjoyed being in the courtroom, and I still do. Now, dovetailing a little bit on what Courtney was saying, we deal with that sentiment on an almost monthly basis in deportation defense. So I can't tell you about one particular deportation defense because every case that we win, it's a very emotional experience. It's very satisfying. And I literally have to walk away from the family afterwards because then otherwise I'm going to join in the circle of tears. And so I do the best I can to walk away. But now I very much look forward to every single deportation case that we have because of that feeling. You just can't explain it. There's no price. It's invaluable. It's an absolutely fantastic feeling to be able to do that.
Well, I'm going to point out at this point that if prospective students are interested in doing immigration law, there is a clinic at San Joaquin College of Law called the New American Legal Clinic, wherein you can actually get started helping individuals with immigration cases. Someone else asked, is there clinical experience available during law school? And the answer is not only do we have our own clinics, but you can do internships at virtually any kind of law firm practicing any kind of law in Fresno. And historically, those jobs have been very easy to come by. So yes, you do get practical experience. Vaughn, what was your special moment?
Yeah, there's something special about being in the field because when you are from a community that doesn't have, and it's not used to having access, one of the cases was in Merced County. There was an incident at the school with one of the children, and they went to, Paulo was the attorney, and I was working with him, and there was an incident where a child got hurt, but they didn't want to, they didn't want to just go sue. And depending on your personality, some of us want to make peace. And when you have that title, it bridges the gaps between cultures through law, because you can explain the law and you can, they wanted to make good, and you can then explain, hey, the family only wants to do a traditional blessing. They don't want to sue. And so if you can just help them with the cost of going to kill a pig, slaughter a pig, and give it to them, which is only $150, they're good and we're all good. And it makes it where you can learn about them, and that's all they want. The school accepted that as sort of the settlement. They learned about Hmong at that time, because this is probably, I want to say almost 20 years ago. So you can figure what happened. And we were able to do that. Both sides were happy, and you can do that. I know that not all cases end up like that, but many times you are the spokesperson for a whole community, not just the case. The case is only sort of the point of the spear that pierces different cultures, pierces different systems, so that way we can be able to understand each other and know each other, because many people don't want to end up in court. We never wanted to end up in court if we can resolve everything peacefully. And I always saw that was part of our job, was to educate further than just the law, to be sort of the point person to make our clients understand this is what is going on, this is law, this is what we need to do. But then to make those who held the law understand, these are people who are wanting to understand. How can we make it better? How can we move forward? How can we educate and let us be that conduit between the two? I know that because we did a lot of this type of work, it didn't pay a lot of bills, but it was very, very satisfying. It gave a higher purpose than just to sort of charge by the hour, because we were kind of first there. And so it's those sort of things, Jan, and law allow the law degree and the ability to research and to write and to have that behind your name allowed you to open doors and to make connections. That's what I would give as an answer to what you asked there.
Very, very good. I'll just ask you again, a totally separate issue. What was the hardest subject in law school?
Oh. I thought constitutional law was the hardest.
That's what I was just going to say.
Yeah. That was the hardest for me, because it seemed it wasn't concrete like a criminal law. You kind of knew what it was. There were elements you kind of can just check off. I mean, common law it took more creativity. It took more intelligent writing. It took a lot more research also. So that was the toughest for me.
Thank you. Does anybody disagree?
I liked con law. Not that it wasn't hard, but I liked it. It was the big things, the important things. I had trouble because I went in knowing what I wanted to do, which was to be a prosecutor. I really had a hard time with real property. It didn't matter to me. I didn't care. There was a lot of, it seemed like a lot of rules that you just had to memorize. I really struggled with that. And con law was hard, but because it mattered, I didn't mind throwing myself into it, So it was more a motivational thing, I guess, for me. That I just didn't want to spend the time that real property took.
Well, I think it's hard. Any subject that you kind of go blah about is hard for somebody to proceed with. Now, I think a lot of you have already kind of answered this question, but one, were you able to clerk or do clinical work while you were in law school? And two, how difficult was it for you to find a job? And Courtney, I'll jump on you.
Not hard. I didn't have a hard time at all. I remember, I can't remember at that point if it was like paper postings on a cork board or if it was an online database. I think it was probably paper postings, but they would post them and then you would just submit a resume and, hopefully you would get an interview. And my first job I got as a first year as a clerk for a firm there that I can't actually remember the name right now. it might have been Caswell, Bell, and Hillison.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So I think it was there, or there was a second firm. I did work at Caswell Bell and then another firm. And then the second one, I feel like that one may have been posted at law school, or I may have even got it on Craigslist at that point. And I ended up working at the second one, which I think was Caswell Bell, for 2 or 3 years, like for the remainder of my law school experience. And then from there, that's when I moved and took a job at a firm in a different city. So I didn't have any problem finding a job. Most of them were super understanding of the fact that I was a law student. The first one that I worked for was a downtown position, and I was a secretary there, and they did want somebody full-time, and I eventually relinquished that position because I needed something with a little bit more flexibility to suit the school schedule. And from that point on, I didn't have any issues at all. And mind you, everybody, I was not the top law student. So I say that because I think it's really important that everybody understands that there are opportunities for you, even if you are not, you know, the top law student. I always have been employed and had very good luck with employment, despite the fact that I was by no means the top of my class.
And thank you. I wanted to comment about something someone said earlier about people, your classmates being supportive of you. And part of the reason for that is because we don't grade on a curve like is done at so many other schools. We grade against a standard, and against that standard, everybody can succeed. And so it's a motivation to help your fellow students. If they help you and you help them, then everyone succeeds. Lazaro, how did you end up at, isn't it Perez, Macasian?
Yeah, Perez, Williams, and Macasian. Perez, Macasian, Williams, and Medina back then. I did my internship as a pre-law philosophy student at Fresno State at the firm. And I was happy to do my 120 hours, and I was happy to get out of there. But then they offered me a paycheck, and I was happy to stay. So that's how I was able to stay there for so long. It was at Perez, Williams, and Medina. So basically, they were just waiting for me to get out of law school, pass the bar, and just continue or join the team. So I was very fortunate in that respect that I basically had a job lined up for me. And after working there for 3 or 4 years, I then decided to go out on my own, and I've been on my own for coming up on 12, 13 years now. So I've been in the legal profession now for quite some time, and I didn't have a problem getting a job, and neither did any of my study friends have a hard time getting a job. In fact, I don't think I knew of anybody having a hard time getting a job after San Joaquin. So if that's a concern for anybody, you could put that aside.
Courtney, you just made a comment asking about getting jobs outside of the Fresno area. Do you want to address that?
Yeah, somebody had sent me a message privately asking how difficult it was to get employment outside of Fresno. And I think that it's important to remember 2 things. First, I didn't seek a job as an attorney outside of Fresno initially because I had not yet passed the bar exam. So my situation was a little bit different because finding a support staff role was obviously a lot easier than it may be for somebody who's looking for a first-year attorney position. Though I will say that when I applied to the first law firm that I worked for in Ventura, I had not received any bar results yet. So they hired me with the understanding that if I passed the bar in November, that I would become an attorney at their firm. And they didn't care where I went to law school or anything like that. They cared that I was and a person who seemed to know what I was talking about in my interview. As I moved around to different locations, the same thing happened when I moved to San Francisco. They also did not care about the law school that I attended, whether it was ABA or CPA, nobody cared. Nobody seemed to care about whether or not I went to a top tier ABA school until I got to the big heavy hitting law firms. And by the time that I made my way up to those law firms, they all cared. And that was just because they had kind of an old school, like, mentality about it. It's too bad that they do that because they're definitely shooting people in the foot who have, they're shooting themselves in the foot for not hiring people who are equally as qualified from other institutions, because everybody who's gone to San Joaquin and who knows successful attorneys knows that we are all capable of doing well in those practices, regardless of where we went to law school. So it is possible. but I think you need to be able to identify what you want to do with your life. If you want to be a top music industry attorney working for Universal Records and you want to get a job there right out of law school from San Joaquin, probably going to have to know a few people to get you in the door there, unless you somehow clerked over the summer or worked as an internship in one of those places. It's not likely you're just going to apply and get, you know, get your way in the door. I got lucky at Live Nation because I had friends and connections there, and that helped me get in. But I will say also, at some point I was applying at the city attorney's office for a number of different positions, and my resume came across the desk of an individual who was a San Joaquin graduate, and his name is Brian Satil. And it was so interesting that that happened, because he immediately reached out to me and said, I can't believe that you went to San Joaquin. I am the only lawyer in Los Angeles that I've ever met that went to San Joaquin. Can we get together and meet and have coffee? Because he was just, you know, like enamored with the fact that there was another San Joaquin graduate. And since that day, 5 or 6 years, 7, maybe even 8 years ago now, he has been like instrumental in different parts of my career and follows up with me regularly. And so even though we're way down here, you have that camaraderie when you find somebody that's from San Joaquin. And the last part of that I'll say is I have hired San Joaquin students in my practice specifically because they're San Joaquin students. Like, I feel like I struggled a little bit finding my way down to Los Angeles and out of Fresno. And so every opportunity that I get, I love to go first to the law school and look for resources there before hiring locally, because I want to be able to give, you know, my people a chance.
That's very nice. Just to put it in perspective a little bit, we have a graduate who is the director of ethics and compliance for the Dallas Mavericks. We have a graduate who's a vice president for human resources for Chevron. And she has worked for Chevron first in Africa, then in Southeast Asia for a number of years, and now in their home office in Concord. So nothing stops you once you have a law degree. If you show that you're capable, no one cares what law school you went to. And I think that intimidates people sometimes, and there's no reason to. We now have 55 individuals who have become either Superior Court judges, administrative law judges, or court commissioners. And the last 2 appointments to the Fresno Superior Court were both San Joaquin grads. So you can do anything you want with the law degree once you have it and prove that you have the skills and can handle the work. So I think what I'd like to do at this point is open it up for questions. If anybody in the audience has questions that they think would be useful to them and other people in the audience. And maybe Diane can help us with that. If not, all 5 of us are fully capable of talking forever. So
yeah, definitely. Let's see if
that's part of being a lawyer.
Let's see if anybody has a hand raising icon up, and we will open up their video. And if they like, we'll give them the opportunity, if they choose to open up their video, and we'll unmute them. So if anybody has a question and would like to raise their hand, we welcome you to do that now. While we're waiting to see if there's any hand raising icons, I know there's been quite a few questions in the chat, and I really appreciate Vong has been answering so many of them. Thank you, Vong, for doing that. That's awesome. So I know there was a question about internships. That is something that's really applicable to everybody. If somebody would like to address that, if you had internships while you were in law school.
Well, it sounds like most people were working, so they weren't really looking for internships, but what the legal environment has been like, at least up to the pandemic, was that there was so much need for attorneys in the Valley area that anyone could get an internship or even a clerking position that wanted it. And in fact, that's kind of an important thing statewide. The statistics are that something like 50% of lawyers in California right now are 55 years of age or older. And so there's this mass exodus from the legal career that's leaving a lot of vacancies and leading to people who do go to law school have lots of opportunities for jobs. One woman who just passed the February bar was at our reception, our virtual reception for the bar passers last night. And she was smiling and saying, yeah, I have 2 job offers now, so I have to decide which one of them I should take. And that's not been that rare in the recent past. I'll go ahead and ask then. Oh, we've got a question.
We have a question from Amanda Ortiz, Jan, so I'm going to unmute her and let her ask her question.
Hi, panel. Thank you for answering any questions. My question is for the ones that have the private law firms. And do you recommend as going out of law school and passing the bar and going straight into a private practice, or working for a firm first?
I can honestly tell you that, with all due respect to the firm that I work for, I learned a lot of the law. I learned how to practice law. I learned the everyday ins and outs, but I also learned what not to do. So I would hesitate to go straight from law school to private practice without having that exposure of, don't reinvent the wheel. If somebody's already doing it, they're successful, there's a certain formula to every business. And unfortunately, law school is not meant to teach you how to run a business. It's meant to teach you the law. Learning how to run a business is a completely different adventure. So I would highly recommend, unless you already have business experience, perhaps you could do that. Some of my friends did go out on their own and were quite successful. I just couldn't imagine doing it myself.
We have a lot of people that open their own practice immediately upon graduating. And pretty much all of them that I've been in contact with are very successful. We've had another question about whether you can go into corporate law without graduating from a top institution. And just off the top of my head, I can think of one person who works for a Fortune 500 company in Texas, and he's a vice president of this Fortune 500 company that makes chemicals all over the world. Also, there's a grad who is the general counsel for an international technology company, and he's only maybe 3 years out of law school and went directly into that position out of law school. There's also another graduate who, in his own practice, solely represents game developers and has been in that practice for years now. So it's entirely up to you and your motivations. People can make it work if they choose to. So
I was going to say the same thing about a group of my classmates definitely went into private practice immediately, and they're all doing quite well. I mean, off the top of my head, Teresa Petty is the first one that comes to mind. She's been operating her own practice in wills, trust, estates, probate law since the very first day we graduated. I would agree that it's somewhat helpful if you're going to pick certain areas of law to, like, I would never, ever, ever have said, okay, I'm going to be a music entertainment attorney right out of San Joaquin and just gone and started my own practice. Like, there's just no way. San Joaquin doesn't even have, actually, I can't remember if they had music entertainment as an elective in the summer when I was there or not, but I know that is such a niche area that unless you have interned somewhere or worked in that area, it's going to be incredibly difficult. But if you're going to pick an area of law that's popular for the geographic location of where you're living, then I do think that it is possible, surely, or you're going to pick a more common area law where you can get clinical practice while at the school, or even work in a position or with a firm while you're in law school that specializes in that particular type of law and learn something while you're doing that in school, then you probably will have a pretty good leg up upon graduating with starting your own practice.
Okay. Diane's got her hand up again.
There's a question from Jennifer Neely. Does anyone have experience with Fresno's Behavioral Health Court?
No.
No.
I do.
Okay, Sally.
I also have experience with Maderas. In fact, I was part of putting Maderas together many years ago, back in maybe 12 and 13. It's a really rewarding opportunity, and it's something that as a prosecutor, it feels very different at first, but it really quite well with what it is that we're trying to do, which is, you know, to do justice for our community. When you deal with people who have behavioral health issues, we can do additional things that help them function, and we can structure probation in such a way that it pitches to them and it strengthens what they need strengthened. So it's been very rewarding to watch people who otherwise, you know, are just in and out of the system, to help them to get onto a regular routine, to help them get on with a job, to help them stabilize either through counseling or through psychiatry or whatever it takes for them, and to monitor them through probation and then watch them succeed. And you turn somebody who was really struggling into a functioning, you know, member of society. So that's hugely rewarding. And those, it's a collaborative court, and there are collaborative courts developing in all kinds of arenas. I also work with the Veterans Collaborative Court, where we deal with those people, again, a skill set and a special set of problems. We're looking next at doing a recidivist DUI court for people who continue to have a problem with alcohol in particular, but also other kinds of DUIs. So again, it's the way that prosecution is going, is how do we help fix the problem instead of just locking people up and being done with them. And it's very, very rewarding as a prosecutor to be involved in those.
Is there a general drug court in Madera?
Yes, there is a general drug court, but the DUI is kind of a special deal, and we've got some really cool tools, including these transdermal devices that you can put on people that candidly make it way easier for me to say, yeah, if you're gonna so this device, you put it on them and on their ankle, and if they're drinking, it shows up in their sweat. So the minute they drink, it goes hot. So for me, if your only problem is alcohol and I have a way to know immediately if you're drinking, well, there's no need for you to be in custody anymore. You know, put on your transdermal alcohol monitor, and if you're drinking again and it's a problem, probation will come out and pick you up. Otherwise, you know, it's sort of it's a halfway system where you're on your honor, and if you fall off, well, we'll scoop you up and start over again. But we can, you know, give you some latitude and let you grow. It's really, really rewarding.
Sally, while you have the floor, there's a question from somebody about any tips to join the DA office. And before you answer that, though, there's also several questions from first generation student asking about financial aid. So maybe Lazaro and Vong, maybe you can address that. There's several questions about how did you, the panelists, afford law school. But let's go back to Sally on tips for joining the DA's office.
Well, you know, the internships are great if you can afford to do that. If not, you know, show an interest. It was a funny story how I got my job at the DA's office. I started in Merced. So my mom ran into the elected district attorney when I was like a junior, my second or third year of law school. And of course, being my mom, she totally said, oh, hey, my daughter's going to law school and she wants to be a prosecutor and blah, blah, blah. And he told my mom, you know, gave her some standard line about, well, tell her to apply, you know. So she came back to me. She said, well, I talked to him. He said apply. So I applied and I got the job. And she ran into him at the same event the next year. And he was trying to avoid her, you know, but so she went up to say hello. And he remembered her and he said, well, whatever happened to that daughter of yours, you know? She said, oh, she's been working for you for 8 months. So much for the name getting it. If you just show up and look interested and are willing to learn, you know, prosecutors' offices, especially at those lower levels, there's a lot of turnover. A lot of people want to come in and get their trial experience and move on. So frequently we're hiring almost all the time. And by the way, I'm teaching a class this summer, probably too late for you guys, but I intend to teach it in a couple summers again on the law of homicide. So take that class. That would be a huge step up.
And And what you've just mentioned is a common problem in the Valley area, is that people go away to law school, and if they come back, their roots now are in some other cities, so they stay for a year or two and get experience and then leave, and that is a big expense to the firm. So they're really looking to hire more local people. But let's go back to Vong and Lazaro about how did you pay for your legal education? Vong, you want to start? I think he had
Sure. The decision was set that I was going. So if I had to take a loan, I was going to take a loan. If I had to work extra, I was going to work extra. So I didn't, in other words, kind of like those who want to start a business, don't let money be the factor. You just go because you needed to finish. But your staff, Jan, really helped with the financial aid process. And I received loans to help me complete the entire education. And like I shared in the chat, it came out to about 40-ish, 45,000 for the 3-year. So you compare that at that time with others, it was a little bit less than other schools, but pretty comparable. So it wasn't, San Joaquin wasn't gonna steal all your money. So it was quite reasonable. And like we said, you helped us find internships, find clerkships, and also allowed us locally to be able to connect to different employers. So many people, like my graduating class, I hardly heard of people struggling to find employment afterwards. More, if anything, people didn't want to leave their comfy job to come start over as a young associate. Other than that, it wasn't because they couldn't find a job. It was maybe they were already employed and doing very well and weren't in the position to leave yet. So that's, I other than having to work to help support the school, kind of guided you to be able to get the financial aid needed to pay for law school.
Well,
that was my takeaway.
Law school is more expensive now, but the tuition at San Joaquin is about 50% or less of what you would pay at a lot of major institutions. You're not going to come out. We hear people come out of school at other institutions being $350,000 in debt, and that would absolutely terrify me. So, Lazaro, how would you answer that question?
I echo a lot of what Vong says in the sense that if you make the commitment to going to law school, really the financing is just a secondary or even third thought. I tell people that I've made 2 major investments in my life. You can think of them as mortgages. One of them is up here and the other one I live in. So, and I'm still paying off law loans, but so that's not really the concern. I don't think. If you're dedicated and you made the decision to go to law school, then your focus ought to be, what do I have to do to get out and take that bar exam ASAP? And so dive in. If you're going to do it, do it. If you're still kind of shaky and not too sure about it, you just need to dive in, and the financing, it's just a second thought. I mean, and I think I said this once before, I took out as many loans as I possibly could. I had no money to begin with, so I thought if I'm going to fail, good luck trying to get the money back because I have nothing to begin with. Obviously, it worked out, and again, it's not something that should be on the forefront of your mind. If you're going to do it, just dive in.
Diane's got her hand up again. I think you're muted, Diane.
We have a question from Amber Gee, so I'm going to unmute her. And Amber?
Okay, so in my current career, it's taken me about 6 years to get to where I'm at. And it's taken a lot of dedication and college and everything to be able to get where I'm at. And so when I think about changing careers completely, because right now I'm in a sales role, I'm wondering, I mean, it's a completely different animal. Is that going to be like a 4-year learning curve? Or is that like a 6-year learning curve to where I'm good? I'm really competitive, but I don't want to be overzealous and think that, you know, I'm going to be making the money that I need to make within 2 years. I mean, is it more like a 4 or 6-year path?
Vaughn, go ahead.
You know, thank you for that question. I answer it this way, Amber. It has to be deeper than money, because it needs to be where I think you're almost at that age, and I consider you still very young, where you want to find something you love. And whether it pays, you know, peanuts or whether it pays gems and rubies, you love it. And so that's very important, because you don't, I think law is great, because law is something in which you can go in to make millions, or you can go in because you just want to help those because there's a cause that you really believe in. So that's something I think it's very personal, that you have to sort of say, okay, if there's a comfort level lifestyle that you want, you know, law has the potential to make 10 times what you're making, but it also has the potential to just make it where you just get by and less than what you're doing. But if you love it, I think it won't be the wrong choice. So that's something you have to find. What do I want to do with my life if I get this law degree? Do I want to advocate for certain causes? Do I want to actually move up in the corporate world, so that way I can you know, improve my lifestyle? Those are personal questions that you can help answer yourself, and I think it'll help you get to where you need to be.
Somebody else want to comment about that?
I think that I agree with everything that he's saying. I found that I was able to be pretty comfortable along the way. Even as a paralegal, I mean, I think I'm trying to think of like when I hit a 6-figure salary versus a 5-figure salary, for example. I would say that by 2010, which is when I graduated in 2007. So 3 years out of law school, still working as a paralegal. I'm gonna guess I was probably making about $75,000, which is not shabby. It's a decent living. Moving to LA, of course, allowed for an increase in salary because the cost of living here is crazy. So the firms tended to pay a little bit more than that. The in-house position at Live Nation, which is a major corporation, was for an attorney with 1 year of experience, and that position offered $100,000 as the salary. If you compare that to a major law firm like Munger, Tolles & Olson, they hired their first-year associates at $160 and gave them about a $20,000 to $50,000 signing bonus. So just out of the gate, those folks were making over $200,000, but those were individuals who were like top-tier graduates from Harvard, Yale, Stanford, and UCLA, and blah, blah, blah. So there is certainly an ability to make decent money regardless of where you went to school, but I think you have to decide what's decent money. Is $50,000 what you're wanting to make? Is $200,000? Do I think that you're going to make $250,000 your first year out of law school as a lawyer? Probably not. I mean, I would love to know how you do it if you are, because I would want to tell everybody to do it the way that you did. But do you have the ability to make a good living and be able to afford a lifestyle in which you're comfortable? I absolutely think you do, regardless of the area that you choose, be that private practice, in-house, or you know, working for a larger law firm in the area.
You also have to think about work-life balance, right?
Totally.
I mean, people that are working in those top firms are working 60, 70 hours a week.
And I'm working that now. I mean, last week was a 65-hour week, and I have a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old. So it was, you know, I mean, it just kind of, it comes and goes. The best, cushiest job was Live Nation because it was in-house and you showed up at 8:30 and you were out of there by 5:30 and there was no working from home because it was a salaried position, and I mean an hourly type position, and they didn't want you working overtime and all this other nonsense, and it was terrific. So I think that's the work-life balance is really important. Those first-year associates at these big law firms, they are giving up a big portion of their life, but they also get a lot of perks. So if you're a single person, no kids, and that works for you, that's great. But if you're a mom or a dad with a kid at home and a spouse, that's going to be really difficult to be working that 60-hour week. I find it to be pretty difficult to work a 60-hour week, but this week is only going to be maybe 30 hours. And so it gives me some time to catch up on all of the sleep and time with my babies from last week.
There are also kinds of positions that have more reasonable hours. We have a tremendous number of grads that are working in the compensation field, and those are not the crazy hours. We must have over 100, if not 150 grads working in the workers' comp field. So.
And Jane, I would add, as a government employee, you know, we're fungible, and people take their leaves when they need them. I've managed to take a couple of relatively long breaks. One time I took 3 years off, and another time I took 7 years off. I was really, really stunned at how little that cost me when I came back. When I came back in 2011, I had left, I don't know, 7 years before I went to law school because I wasn't good at math. But I came back with this gray hair, and that was as good as 7 years in the courtroom to a lot of people. You know, I just picked right up. Like I said, I was stunned at the ability to come and go in the field that I'm in. And I would just echo what Vong said about, I really feel like I've found what I was meant to do. I've done a lot of different things in my life, and they all led me to where I am. And I feel like I'm at the right place at the right time to do the right thing for the people that come to me for help and that need me. And the money's pretty good, you know, it's public record, but that's not why I did it. That just came along.
Thank you, Sally. I think what everyone is saying is you have to decide what you want, what's going to make you have a sense of fulfillment one way or the other. So
I just want to add that when I first heard the question, I thought because going from sales to law, although you can argue that there's a lot of similarities, there is a huge transitionary period for the first year that you are going to hurt, and you should hurt, because there's a difference. You have to be taught the law, but then you have to be taught how to think like a lawyer. And if you're not already of that mindset, it's a transition. So the first year is the difficult year, and that's the year that obviously you want to get beyond. The money, yes, I agree with completely with everybody. We put a lot more per hour on the case than the case is actually paying us. I mean, that's just the bottom line. We dedicate a lot of time and effort to each one of our cases because that's just the type of people that we are. But don't forget that you're going to dedicate a lot of time and effort to just get beyond the first year. So let's focus on that as well.
Any more questions? If you're thinking of it, other people are thinking of it as well. Same thing as in class. If you have a question in mind, you can be sure that other people have that question in mind. Someone is asking a question whether there's tutoring help available. I think every faculty member at the law school considers themselves a tutor. They expect you to be contacting them outside of class, either by an appointment or by email, asking questions in order to enhance your understanding. I think they are disappointed when people do not contact them outside of class. So.
I'm still receiving tutoring, by the way.
From
Larry Artinian helps me with contracts at least once a month.
Oh, there's all kinds of notes coming up here. There are internship possibilities in everything that you can possibly conceive of. I mean, someone is asking, saying, There's an internship possibility at the ACLU. Yes, that's true. There's internship possibilities at legal aid, at firms doing every kind of practice. We were talking earlier about needing to work for a firm for a while in very specialized areas. Well, we have firms in Fresno that do patent law, if you want to do patent law. And someone who worked in that area is now a patent examiner in Washington, D.C. So long ago we had this phrase, 1 degree, a world of options, but it's really, really, really true. It just depends upon what you want to do. So what, if you had law school to do over again, what would you do differently, Vong, about going to law school? I know what I would do differently, since I know a lot more now about how to go to law school.
I would get to know the professors much more. I think there was a wealth of knowledge there. And it's not an excuse, but I think it's a cultural thing where it wasn't, you didn't see them as someone approachable. So it was very new for me, especially being first generation, first to go to professional school. It made it where if you struggled, I felt like I struggled too much alone, and I could have shared that with, had all of them. And that's what I think the one thing I would have done differently. And I think it would have improved how successful I was in the classroom, and to also understand the law more completely as I went through the classes. So that's my one thing that I would do. And I think certain individuals have that skill a lot more, where they can just approach administrators to teachers and just be very on an equal playing field. And then some of us are very intimidated, very respectful. So if they don't ask you, you never ask them. If they don't approach and ask how you're doing, you'll never tell them how you are doing. And so those are things in which, I am much more comfortable with now, and I'm trying to teach my children to do better at. And so that's the one thing. But everything else, I love how small the school was, how close it's in your backyard. So I live here, and, everything else I can't complain. That's the one.
Lazaro, what do you think?
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, it's one thing to get the answer correct, but it's quite another to know why you got it correct. And so I wish I would have been that assertive with the professors. And the one professor that I did speak to on a regular basis, and I appreciated his time, Dr. Purvis. Professor Purvis was a fantastic person to talk to. He has a very interesting view on life that if you want to hear it, he'll be more than happy to tell you. But business organizations, con law, he was more than happy to talk to you about it. And that lesson of learning why you got it right was huge for me when I was studying for the bar, because on the MBEs, just because you got it right, you just think, okay, I got it right. But it may not be for the reason that the examiners think you should get it right. So the next time they ask it, they might ask it just with that little twist. You need to know why. So yeah, if I had to do it all over again, I would have made best friends with all the professors, and even a better friend of Jan. So
that comment about the MBE is very important, because the MBE now is 50% of the score on the bar exam. And if you go into law school just learning the rules cold from memorization, you're not going to be able to work them through on those MBE questions. The MBE actually drives the whole bar exam. The scores on the MBE, they then take the essay scores and give them the same spread as the spread on the MBE. So it's very closely tied to the entire score that someone will get on the bar exam. Sally or Courtney, you want to add something?
Well, mine is way more mundane than that. I loved law school. I was one of those weird people that once hit the 6-month mark and I knew what they were talking about, I just threw myself in and loved every minute of it. I don't know if you remember, Jan, but I was always the one asking questions, and everybody's like, if there's no more questions, we could go home. Could you just get Sally to shut up, So mine would be much more mundane. When I was going to law school, the financial aid was free and easy, and I took out way more loans than I needed to. I learned later when I was at home raising kids how to live low and save money, and I wish I would have learned that earlier. So, you know, do what you need to do, but don't do more than you need to do in terms of financial aid. That's my piece of advice.
Right. I think people need to try to dial it back a little bit while they're in law school. You don't have any time to go out partying anyway, so don't get yourself so far in debt if it's not necessary. So, Courtney, what about you?
I really loved being at San Joaquin. When I think back, I think of all the things that I did do, and I can't think of many other than studying a little more that I didn't do. I was lucky enough to be the Student Body Association president, so I got to sit with you and some others on the board of directors, and that was such a unique and exciting experience to learn more about the inner workings of the school. And I also remember being your assistant and working with you on researching some torts related topics. I worked in the library as a library clerk or whatever we were called. And I had great relationships with all of my professors, and often they would provide me with extra assistance in tutoring, knowing that I needed it. I was a scholarship recipient at the law school. I was a semifinalist in the moot court competition. So everything that I wanted to accomplish other than being in the top of the student, you know, rankings occurred for me. So I think the only thing I could have done differently, or that I wish I would have done more, was have figured it out my first year so that the other years would have been just a little bit easier, because instead I was playing catch up in the second and third and fourth year for my lack of attention in my first year. I also think, and now there are so many resources, but I think that had I started prepping for the MBEs a little sooner than I had, because that was the reason why I struggled with the bar exam, and I imagine that's the reason why others struggle with passing the bar exam now, especially because it's worth more. It wasn't my writing that kept me, it was my MBEs, and we're talking like 5 points or 2 points or 1 point. And so it would be right on the verge there of passing the bar and not passing the bar, all because of multiple choice questions. And I feel like maybe had I taken some time earlier on, after finishing torts, for example, my first year, if I had just started looking at what a torts multiple choice question would have been like and practiced those a little bit earlier on, and came to you with questions as my torts professor, then maybe I would have been able to have had a better grasp on how the MBE worked. I think I waited until Barbary or whatever course I took, probably that and all the others, to try to figure that out. And it caused me some really great anxiety. So maybe had I thought about that a little sooner, which maybe students do now compared to what we did then, I don't know.
We are trying to get students to do more MBE earlier in their legal education experience. I'm going to answer a couple of other jobs or other questions we've had. We do have on-campus work study jobs, particularly as a library proctor in the library, which is very useful because for the most part, you sit and study while you're keeping the library open. The LSAT, they contend, is a 50%, or excuse me, an 80% predictor of whether you're going to succeed in law school. I disagree with that. I think the LSAT is actually giving you, as a prospective student, more information than it gives to us. What it's telling you is not that you can't succeed in law school. It's just telling you you're going to have to work harder at it. If you have a score of 145, you're going to have to work harder at it than the person who has a score of 155. We've had valedictorians have low LSAT scores, quote unquote, low LSAT scores. And that doesn't measure your motivation. And it's not, there's that 20% of the times that it's not a good predictor. You may very well fall in that category. So you shouldn't determine your destiny based on your LSAT score. I think you should determine your destiny based on the things that like Vong and Lazaro and everyone else has said. what is it that you want to do with your life? So, Diane, you had some information that you wanted to share. You're muted. You're muted. There you go.
Thank you. Yes, as we're beginning to wrap up this evening's event, if there were any questions that we did not get to answer, please feel free to email those to myself, dsteele@sjcl.edu, and we'd be happy to address those. But thank you everybody for participating. We're so excited to have these wonderful panelists here and Dean Pearson. We do want to emphasize before we transition to closing remarks that we are still accepting applications here at San Joaquin College of Law. Our application deadline is June 30th. So if you have not yet submitted your application, you still can. There's one date-sensitive issue that is very important for you to be aware of, and that's our law school admissions test requirement. Every applicant is required to take the law school admissions test, and there's one more test that is available and that we're accepting, and that is the July Lsat. We opened it up. Typically, we do not accept the July Lsat, but we opened it up due to the fact that the last couple of Lsats have been canceled because of COVID-19. So Dean Pearson graciously has extended that opportunity to our applicants to take the July 13th LSAT, and the deadline to register for that is May 28th. Lastly, I also want to ask all of you to please complete a short survey. It's going to be emailed to all of our participants following this event, and we really appreciate your feedback on how to improve these events and how to best meet your needs. We appreciate that. And I really want to thank all of the staff that showed up. We had Dean Tenorelli, who's on with us. Dean, thank you for being here with us. She's our Dean of Students. And Beth Pitcock is our Human Resource Director. And Francisco Rosas is our Assistant Director of Admissions. So if you have any additional questions about the application or the admissions process, please don't hesitate to reach out to Francisco or myself. We're excited to help you. Thank you, Jan Pearson.
Well, I'm going to ask for some closing remarks from all the panelists, and I'm just going to take them in the order that I have their pictures up in front of me. So Sally, that means we start with you.
All right. Well, you know, when my decision to go to law school was made after some consideration. I worked hard. I had to move to do it. But it's a decision that I would never, ever, ever take back. I came to San Joaquin because Fresno was my home, and the Valley was and always will be my home. And everywhere I've gone, I've run into San Joaquin graduates. The person who hired me into this office back in 2011 was a San Joaquin graduate. The DA in Fresno was a San Joaquin graduate who went to school with me. It's an amazing sense of camaraderie. It's very different from other schools, again, because of the lack of a curve. We build teams, we encourage each other, we work together, we help each other figure it out. And when one of us figures it out, you know, we celebrate that for each other. I still watch who makes it to the bench, and I celebrate when those people are San Joaquin grads, because those are my people. I still send people to the San Joaquin job board because it's the most prolific, successful place to find a job, a law job in the county. I've never been there in the Valley. I've never been there and not seen something that looked new and interesting and different to me. So I still go back. I run into my classmates and members of other classes. And I still see, obviously I come back and I love my school. And I don't think everybody can say that. I know Lazaro talked about starting somewhere else, but San Joaquin is different, and it's a great school. You can get through in a reasonable amount of time for a reasonable amount of money and change your whole life, and find what you were meant to do. And it really is 1 degree and just boatloads of options when you get out. So there's a million ways to go, and you can see from the panelists tonight, we do very, very different things, and each of us finds that degree to be fulfilling. So if you have any questions, you know, Diane has my email. I would love to talk with anyone who's interested in being a prosecutor. We give people tours of the office all the time. It's a little more compromised now because of the COVID stuff, but we'd love to talk to you, answer any questions you might have about this particular thing. But remember, once you graduate from San Joaquin, you have this whole other family, and that family is your family forever. And even people, I just met Vong tonight, but if I needed something from him, or if there was something I thought he could help me with, I wouldn't hesitate to say, hey, Vong, you know, you're a San Joaquin grad, could you help me out with this issue I'm having with the Hmong community? And I'm sure he'd be helpful. And the same thing, I would expect any of them to reach out to me and ask me questions as well. So come on in, join the family. It's a great family to be a part of.
Thank you, Sally. Thank you very much. Courtney?
I mean, I have to mirror so much of what Sally said. My path has been anything but typical. And I have just felt nothing but nonstop support along the entire way. And I'll never forget the day that bar results came out. And even though it had been a number of years, probably 10 staff members at San Joaquin reached out to me and talked to me about passing the bar. And when I went to the reception, which I drove from LA to on a work day, because I knew that's where I needed to be to see everybody who saw that process through with me. And seeing the joy on everybody's face, it was genuine. It was genuine joy and happiness for everything that I had worked for, and that the staff at San Joaquin had worked for in getting me to that finish line. And I think that just speaks so much about the school and the staff and the opportunities that they provide. I know that when I was able to hire some students to work for my practice, I felt great joy in being able to return something to the community, to the San Joaquin community, that somebody once extended to me. And I just think that that's something else that's really special. And so if you are considering law school, don't let everything that is stressing you out now about making the choice be the stressors that make the actual choice for you, because there is going to be some solution to each one of those problems that you may be considering and thinking about now. Finances were obviously a concern for me. I'm the oldest of 7 kids, and I took care of pretty much all of those kids while I was going to law school, and was helping them with their college tuition and education and all of this other junk while I was trying to get myself through law school. And we made it, and everybody is happy now. And I just think that there are always going to be things in your life that are going to complicate it. That's life. That's what we're all dealing with. And now is a very interesting time to be making a gigantic decision, but nobody should put those decisions on hold just because of a moment that's occurring right now, because this is an opportunity that you have to shape and change what's going to happen for you in the future. And if you're looking for an opportunity to have complete and full support, then San Joaquin is certainly the place to go, and you will receive the support that you need in order to achieve whichever goal it is that you're looking to achieve.
I do have to say, Courtney, that there was much screaming and running around when we saw that you had passed the bar.
There was a lot of crying down here. That's what there was.
Cesaro?
Yeah, there are very few days or events in one's life that really makes a difference, and it's something that you'll never forget. Marriage is right up there. Having kids is right on up there. But actually going through law school is something that you will never forget. And the experience at San Joaquin is something that I will never forget. Getting the bar results, never forget that. I mean, it was an emotional experience. My wife was looking at the screen, and the name popped out, and she says, you passed. And I kept saying, how do you know? How do you know? She said, well, just read it. Your name's right there. And I was just so overwhelmed that I could hardly even read what was on my screen. And my boss at the time, has a heart of gold. He knew that I was going to be looking up the results at that particular time. So as soon as he heard the screaming, he knocked on the door and handed me my business cards. And that was like the nicest thing that anybody could have ever done for me. I love the phrase, Jan, 1 degree, a world of options. You will not know what will happen to you after law school. But the great thing about a law degree is that it opens so many doors. You will never be bored with a law degree. And I really think that San Joaquin is a great place. If you're working full-time, if you want that place where everybody's working together, for the common goal, San Joaquin's a place to be. So like Sally was saying, come on over, join the family.
Thank you. Vaughn, we'll let you finish up.
Some of us are blessed with finances, so that way you can stand. Some of us are blessed with names, so that way it gives you something stable to stand on. But I think what America gives is education. What America gives is the ability for no names to make a name, no money to make money, no opportunity to take every opportunity. And it's an honor to be with Sally, Courtney, and Lazaro, you guys this evening, to meet some of you for the first time. But it shows how great it is to be able to be in a country where you can get all this. And to all the prospective students, you're at that point where you're itching to scratch something. And my encouragement is, when it itches, you got to scratch. Because if you don't, the itch may go away and you never come back to that moment again. And this opportunity to grow inside, to grow with knowledge and grow in the hardships of law school, it betters you, it strengthens you. And not only does it better you, it betters your family and everyone who one day will come to you to go, I need help with this. That you become a tool in which people want to use. And I think that all of you who are looking to go into law school have that servant heart inside of you. And that's important. And at San Joaquin, you will have staff there, administration there, and teachers there who want to see you succeed. Because once you get that degree, whether you go on and have Esquire after your name or just keep JD, SJCL is prestigious enough where if you say you have that degree, the door opens, the hands are, handed out to shake your hand. And I've experienced that, because every time I say that I have a law degree, people take you more serious. And that's just the world we live in. That's a reality, but it's okay. That's why you are investing in that. So you will have the staff to get you there. I also want to say that San Joaquin is a gem within the Central Valley, and it's a gem within California, and now it's spreading out there. We all have to value right here. Many of you probably are right here because you're joining us through Zoom. We forget about your school or our school, Jan, because you just do things well and you're quiet about your success. And it's only when you think back, you go, oh, we do have a law school here, and soon we'll have a medical school. And when we think of schools, all we think about is Fresno State or FPU, but we forget that you are providing such great people in the legal field and in the service area. And all of you who are thinking can join this family, and you will see that law is for everyone. For the one who has a servant heart, just wants to give, it's you. Any field you think of, from helping the workers to the immigrant to the rich Apple corporate company to the startup, it's for everyone. So you can't ever get into law and go, I don't know what I want to do anymore, because there's always something to do. So I will just close with this. Law school is going to be tough, but the great thing about a law education is, I like what Lou Holt said, and we're not like sports. Lou Holt says if he loses the national championships, he's a loser, and he came in second place, right? If you graduate the end of your class and you still graduate, they still call you a JD. So you can be the last one. So in other words, they can still call them a doctor. So you don't have to be the best, but you do have to have the top. And so I encourage all of you to put that application in, because I think we're looking for younger brothers and sisters in this field and to do even greater things for the Valley or for wherever you're called to. So thank you for tonight, Jan. Thank you, Diane. And thank you, Sally, Courtney, and Lazar for the input.
well, I have to say thank you to everyone. This is other probably than when bar results and graduation. This is my favorite night of the year because I get to see all of you. I get to hear about the incredible things that you've accomplished. I'm so impressed by what you've accomplished, and I'm probably going to go home and cry because it makes me, it remotivates me to keep doing what we do at the law school. So I need to thank all of you. Thank you. Diane, do you have something else that you need to say or want to say?
I am just echo everything. Thank you, Jan. You are such an inspiration to this institution as well. I'm so grateful for your leadership and all the panelists for coming. It is so exciting to hear from you. It reinvigorates me also in my role as Director of Admissions. So I look forward to helping all of you on your journey to law school.
So thank you, everybody. I wish I could have lunch with all of you, but that's forbidden right now. So thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.